So, in my practice over the years, I worked with so many different individuals that came out of narcissistic relationships and managed to essentially escape and come to meet with me to really unpack a lot of what had gone on during that time. And over and over again, I found that narcissistic relationships started off on the same type of trajectory. And as the second part of this series here, we're going to cover one huge control tactic that narcissists use to essentially prevent somebody from leaving. We'll talk about this. We'll talk about why they do this. And we'll also talk about how to heal from this. And a huge part of how we can really take our power back in a healthy way to re empower the relationship to ourselves after being through narcissistic abuse. So, one of the first things that's in here is we're doing a bit of a series here to kind of outline the relationship with narcissists. And this is part two. But one of the first things we'll see in part one that we covered in terms of how this whole experience unfolds is often a narcissist will start by really love bombing the person that they're dating. And once they feel like they've won that person over in a variety of different forms, and we talk about all about love bombing and how it happens and how to notice it in part one. But, once they've really won that person over that they're dating, they will then work to foster dependency and reliance. They will work to, cause you to be as dependent on them as possible. And that can be financially dependent, like paying for your car, paying for a phone, just anything that keeps you connected. It can, keep you mentally dependent by taking care of like intellectual things that you have to do. So doing all of your taxes for you or helping you with your work projects. But once there's this sense of really relying on them, they'll start to actually put you down a lot and criticize you and make you feel like I can't do these things without this person. Like I'm literally dependent on this person for, all these really important things to me in my life. And so what happens is in this relationship dynamic, narcissists deeply discourage individuation. They want you to not really have a healthy sense of self and identity outside of them. And in fact, as we talk about in this video, a lot of this isolation and division sort of tactic here, part of how this can actually start is that they'll take away from you. And this definitely occurs over time. Like in the first part of this series, we talked about the early stages of a relationship with a narcissist, but this is really like once you're in, right? So once you're in, once there's a big commitment, once they've seen that they can really foster a lot of that reliance and dependency, they'll then try to even strip away further your identity. So if there's things that are meaningful to you in your life, if there's things that really matter to you in your life, they'll actually work to strip those things away. And you can see different variations of this, right? Like if you have a family member that you are really close to, they may work to kind of poison your relationship with that family member over and over again. If you have a really close friend, they may say, oh, don't go out with that friend. That's not a good person. That's not a good friend. And they'll try to essentially plant seeds and poison the well over time. And in doing so, and this may not just be with like relationships, this may be with friendships at work. This could be with workplace relationships as a whole or your workplace as a whole. It could even be to talk to you about how do you deserve a better job? You shouldn't be in this job. You don't even have to work. Like there can be all these dynamics that they'll use to take away things that are meaningful to you or to poison the things that are important to you. And in doing so, right, we have to recognize that part of us as human beings having a really healthy sense of individuality, a sense of personal empowerment, and a sense of actually having a secure baseline that we can bring into other relationships is to have a good bit of balance across the 7 areas of our lives. So to have a career that we're invested in and that we have goals around, to have goals with our money and how we handle our money, how we budget things, to have mental goals, hobbies, things we like to do that are impacting learning, right? Or having different philosophies or political opinions. Like all of these things are in that mental category. Emotionally, how we regulate emotions, where we go to regulate emotions. If we do have a good friend that we vent to or share things with, like, as you go through the different 7 areas, be it career, financial, mental, emotional, spiritual, practices, community, all that kind of stuff in that area, physical, so habits, how you take care of yourself, all these different things. And then of course, relationships being that last major area of life, they try to essentially isolate and divide you from others. So when we strip this down, what's actually happening is this person is robbing you of your sense of identity. The less of a personal sense of power you have, and I don't mean power like from a narcissist point of view, like power over others. I mean like personal power, like a sense of, hey, if I want to go try to advance in my career, it may take time, but I trust that I can do that. If I want to change my relationship to how I manage my money and spend my money, I have the capacity to do that. If I want to learn about new things, I have the ability to do that too. What they want to do essentially is strip you of these different components, right? They really want to keep you feeling like you don't have a sense of self. The less of a sense of self you have, the less powerful you feel, the more you feel like you need a savior. And the more it will create further and further reliance, dependency on the narcissist. And so what the narcissist seeks to do in this area is isolate you from yourself in all these different areas of life, from the things that are meaningful to you, strip away your identity. And really what they do as well is they unfortunately try to essentially invade your mind, with every little thought having to be about them, every little bit of your focus, energy, attention having to, relate back to them. And they'll really try to make sure that, you're walking on eggshells and there really isn't much room in your life for anything but them. And this is where they're creating so much dependency. And then when they pair this with intermittent reinforcement, okay, so this is like, we talked about this earlier, but what gamble in the earlier part of the series, but what gamblers get addicted to, right? They get addicted to the intermittency of the reward. And so let's say they're at the slot machine, don't win, don't win, don't win, don't win, randomly win. A lot of that actually mirrors the love addiction component with a narcissist, because a lot of this intermittent reinforcement is you're not in their good graces. Originally you were in their good graces. Originally there was this deep connection and the love bombing. But then that's stripped away, you feel this absence, and you keep trying to essentially become obsessed with winning that back. And because it's intermittent and it happens sometimes, it's highly addictive for a lot of different individuals. And so, well, because we have this huge dopamine rush that comes with it, right? And for the relationship variation of it, it's dopamine and oxytocin. And then that's taken away again. And so we're left seeking that high, we're left chasing that. And so what you'll see happen is over time, if you are in a relationship, and it's so important to be aware of, because, what we talked about as well in part one is this is not just something that will happen, for example, in a romantic relationship. Obviously, we talk about it the most in the context of romantic relationships here, but narcissistic abuse and different tactics that narcissists use, they can occur in the workplace, they can occur in friendships, they can occur in family relationships, they can occur in government and institutions. I mean, there can be all of these different things. And funnily enough, they'll tend to follow the same path. You'll see so many of these different parallels. And so if you take a look, right, you'll see that this individual is, they win you over, then they want to seek to isolate and divide you from people that you can go to, that you love, divide you from, relationships around you, so that you keep having to go back to them as the savior. And this is this ongoing dynamic that this individual will use, to create this sense of essentially helplessness and, dependency over and over again. And what they'll do as well, right, is it may be difficult to divide you right away, right? There may not be, if you've got a long-standing friendship with somebody, this may not be an overnight thing. But what they will do is they will continuously plant those sort of seeds of what the person's doing wrong, why it's not, why they're not a good friend, or, whatever it is, why your job isn't good, you should leave your job, until, that repetition emotion programs people. Repetition and emotion is very potent in terms of how we view ourselves, how we view our lives. And so being able to really leverage a lot of that repetition and emotion over time essentially makes the person feel like, oh, okay, maybe they must be right. There's this idea, if you tell somebody something long enough or enough times, they'll just come to believe it. And it's actually because that's how the subconscious mind is programmed, essentially. So it's really important to be aware of these things so that you can find yourself in a position where if you feel your identity stripped away, the things that matter to you being stripped away, this division coming up in your life and all these close and meaningful relationships, you can see these things as red flags. And, research shows a quote from Dr. Ramani. She says up to 10% of people either are narcissists in society or have strong subclinical narcissistic traits. And, we have to take a look at that, right? We have to actually realize that if that's something that happens so often, chances are there's a narcissist that you work with, or, there's a narcissist that's running some sort of system in your society, maybe multiple, or there is a narcissist, unfortunately, in a family dynamic, or, that you've been around in a friendship. So it's really important to recognize some of these tactics so that we can create some of that space, and the first big step to healing from any kind of narcissistic abuse is to first be aware, right? We can get so caught up for so long in this trap and dealing with the repercussions of the situation if we're not aware of what's happening. Because unfortunately, when the person is not aware that they are in a state of narcissistic abuse, they keep falling for the same tricks. They keep feeling like they're on this hamster wheel trying to get that positive reinforcement wherever, whenever they can, by changing themselves, by changing their identity, by giving things up, hoping that that will create this reward from the narcissist. And it's a horrible way to live. And then, the second part of healing here is to make sure that you have a sense of independence and identity. The more we give aspects of our lives up, the more we give up our career or our relationship to money and how we spend our money or budget our money, the more we give up these aspects of the 7 areas of our lives, unfortunately, the harder and harder it is to leave this kind of narcissistic dynamic. Because the more we give up these aspects of our lives, the more dependent we become, right? And that's what the narcissist wants. So we have to make sure that we are in a place where we maintain our sense of independence and identity. Or if it's been stripped away, we work to reconcile that. We work to take that back. We look at what we did give up and we recreate and reinvent those aspects of our lives in a healthy form. And another huge part of healing, if we have step 3 here, is to build the sense of community again in your life. Having people around you, having healthy relationships where there's mutual support and mutual trust is extremely impactful. And it's also really important that, you have feedback from people. If you have a person you're dating, for example, and they are trying to constantly tell you how everybody in your life is bad or wrong or doesn't care or isn't good for you, or really shaming any kind of opinion that differs from their own. I mean, this is a huge red flag. Those are things that it's sort of like, hey, the common denominator is probably that person, not all these people in my life, right? If the narcissist has problems with all these people in my life, it's probably not all the people in my life that are the source of the issue. So I think it's really important that we rebuild our relationships, we rebuild our community, have more vulnerability and open discussions, because a lot of what the narcissist will do as well is try to make sure that you don't feel comfortable or safe speaking your opinions and your truth. Because if you do, you might share that the relationship's not healthy. You might share that something's going on at home. You might share what's tearing you apart. And people might say, hey, that's not healthy. That's not a good situation. And the narcissist doesn't want that. They don't want alternating pieces of feedback, right? They want only their narrative all the time. Anybody who challenges it is absolutely shameful, and they want to continuously separate you from those people. And so it's important that we rebuild our sense of relationship, rebuild our sense of community. And it's also really important that in the state of healing, we can reprogram the different core wounds that are left, right? Because there's a ton of wounds that will take place that will imprint the subconscious mind around feeling defective, feeling not good enough, because the narcissist will constantly put you down, feeling like you cannot have boundaries. And if you do, something's wrong with you. There's so many different dynamics that you'll see take place. And if you want to do a much deeper dive, you can go into the reprogramming and healing from narcissistic abuse course. In the link down below, you access it for free for the entire 7 days. And it's more than enough time to get through that course. But it's really important that you understand that whatever the narcissist took away, it is your job to take those things back healthily, slowly, and surely over time, right? So, whatever it is that your identity was, it doesn't have to be this. Like, if you left a job that you didn't like, you don't have to go back to that job, but you can rebuild by understanding, well, what jobs do I like? What career is meaningful to me? What is important to me? And do that introspective work to discover again who you are after a relationship with somebody like this, and really rebuild that sense of individuation, individual identity across those 7 areas of life. And again, I'll just say them one last time. So in your career, with your finances, and it doesn't mean you have to like make all this money, but like, how do you budget your money? What's important for you to spend money on? How do you want your relationship to money to be, right? Do you want to be the person who spends all these things on materials or who saves? Like, just really identifying who you are there. Mentally is all your thoughts, opinions, political ideas, philosophies. Emotionally is, how you regulate your emotions, what you do that emotionally fills your cup, brings you joy, happiness, relationships with emotional connection around them. Then we have physical, your physical habits, right? Your health. And then we have spiritual, different practices and relationships. So other relationships in your life outside of the narcissist. And I really want to urge anybody who's been through this in any form with a narcissist to take the opportunity to go into those places, rediscover who you are, what your boundaries are, what your needs are, and to be able to stand for that in your life going forward. It will be a huge part of healing and allow you to take a huge step forward. So thank you for watching. I hope this is helpful for you. Let me know any other questions you have down below, or if you are wondering about different signs that somebody might be a narcissist, different characteristics. I'm interested to hear. And that's it for today. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you're enjoying this channel. I would super appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you in future videos.